What are your best and worst concert experiences? We'll talk about that coming up next. Welcome. It's another edition of Music Meanderings. I'm Mike Lamneck. Today we're going to talk about your best and worst concert experiences. And that's going to be very subjective to a lot of factors. I kind of put the concert experience down to four pillars. The four pillars of the concert experience. Venue, also sound, which kind of ties in with the venue, crowd, and the overall performance. Now, based on those factors, here are some of my favorite concert performances that I've seen. Of course, the first time I ever saw a concert, that is pretty special to me. Back in 1977, it was actually a birthday present. I got to see Kansas in a basketball arena, along with opening act Nazareth. And if you listen to the 1979, I believe, maybe 78 Kansas album, Two for the Show, the live album, that pretty much captures what that concert experience was. And just a great concert for a first concert. Really enjoyed it. Now, as I said, it was in a basketball arena, so the sound was not the best. The crowd, however, it was the Point of No Return tour, and the crowd was just electric, and the performance was fantastic. Original lineup of the band, and they were just at their peak at that time. All right, fast forward a couple years to 1979. I got to see one of the hottest bands of the day, really at their prime as well. Now, some might argue that, but Bon Scott lead vocals for acdc 1979 on the Power Age tour. General admission show at a fairgrounds coliseum. I remember it just being so packed. I had my ticket in my hand. That's back when you carried tickets and they weren't on your phone. Had my ticket in hand, and once the doors opened, I just kind of floated in with the crowd. I'm not so sure I was even on my feet. And my arm was like locked against my side, and it was so crowded I couldn't even pull my hand up that had the ticket in it. So I was just hoping that I would not drop that ticket before I got to the door. Once we got inside, probably 10 feet away from the stage, just a fantastic show, Power Age tour, acdc. Again, looking at the four pillars of the concert experience. Venue, Fairgrounds Coliseum. Not great acoustically, kind of drafty. Of course, it was very hot for that particular show. And also the crowd was just couldn't be beat. The crowd was wild and really into it. Not to mention the opening band was UFO. So just a great double bill with UFO, followed by acdc. Great performance. Definitely ranks up as one of my best concert experiences. It is Music Meanderings. We're talking best and worst concert experiences, and go ahead and post yours in the comments below. What were your best and worst concert experiences? Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that these are the best bands in concert or the worst bands in concert. It just means on that particular night, that's how I saw this concert experience. So what were your favorite rock concerts? Go ahead and post those below. And do you remember the days when you used to carry tickets? Perhaps got your tickets at the box office ahead of time. One thing I do remember is you didn't have to pay all the exorbitant fees that they tack onto ticket prices now. In fact, this next show, I believe, cost me $7.50 to see the Scorpions with Sammy Hagar and April Wine. And if my memory serves me correctly, the Scorpions were actually on first. I believe they were. It was their first U.S. tour. It was on the Love Drive tour. Not many people in the U.S. were really into them at that point. I had the Love Drive album, so I was excited to see them. But the Scorpions on the Love Drive tour with Sammy Hagar and April Wine. In the Scorpions, of course, Klaus Meine, he's still in the Scorpions. Rudolf Schenker, still in the Scorpions. Matthias Jabs, also currently in the Scorpions. Michael Schenker, Rudolph's brother, who went off to do lots of solo work and also in UFO. He was with them at the time. And Francis Buchholz on bass and Herman Rarebell playing the drums for the Scorpions. Great set list. Great show, Scorpions in concert, 1979. Ranks right up there as one of my best concert experiences. We're talking classic concerts today on Music Meanderings. What were your best and worst concert experiences? Go ahead and post that below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel as well. Well, next up for me is Steely Dan, 1994. 1994, Steely Dan, a band that just didn't tour much, did they? Now, in the 70s, in the early 70s, when they just got started, they'd tour. Then they decided they were more of a studio band, didn't like being on the road so much. So they became primarily a studio band. And then 1994 rolled around, and they did go on tour, played a lot of what they call the sheds, which are the big open air places, the amphitheaters. And that is where I saw them. I actually had lawn seats. It was a hot August night. No, not Neil Diamond, but it was a hot August night. And I had a poncho on because it was pouring down rain. And they rented these little chairs that you could sit on, so you didn't really have to sit in the mud or in the grass. So that's what I did. I hunkered down, put that poncho on over my head, and just enjoyed 2 hours of sweet Steely Dan music. What a live band. They're one of those bands that if you're one that wants like a lot of movement on the stage or a big performance, not so much, right? That's not what they do. They're more of just a performance band, getting it perfect. But if you like that sort of vibe, just a great show, and definitely ranks up as one of my more memorable concert experiences, Steely Dan in 1994. So who else has kept their ticket stubs from back in the day? I have hundreds of them, around 300, and that's not to every show that I've seen, but the majority of them. I do have the ticket stubs for those shows, and I went through those when I was preparing this, looking for the best and worst concert experiences. Now we're going to get to probably the more controversial section, and that is my worst concert experiences. Again, let me say, this is no comment on the band, their talent, even their performance as a live band. Every band has bad nights. Again, you could be in a venue that has horrible sound. There are all kinds of circumstances. I fully realize that, but these were my worst concert experiences. And I think the first one on the list is really going to surprise you. Going back to 1983, MTV, right? There was no hotter rock band at the time than Def Leppard. 2 sold out shows in the area. Went to the first one, and I don't know if they were tired, if perhaps the tour was wearing on them. Joe Elliott's voice was not in good form for Def Leppard, and the guys just seemed to be going through the paces. It was very sloppy. I think they even had to stop one song and start it back up. It was just not a great show, and couple that with the fact that it was bad sound in a place that wasn't known for good sound to start with. So very disappointing. Was really looking forward to that show. Maybe the second show was better the following night, but Def Leppard, unfortunately, goes on my list of worst concert experiences. Now, let me say, I've seen many videos of the band since then, and they sound and look great to this day. Just completed a big stadium tour and still out there doing it. So hats off to Def Leppard. We'll stay in the 80s for another one. 1987. Beastie Boys, Licensed to Ill. I believe that was the first rap album to top the pop charts. You can check on that, but I believe that's true. Licensed to Ill in 1987. Paul Revere, No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Of course, the video, Fight for Your Right to Party. The band was on fire. Came around to a smaller venue in 1987, and my brother and I actually went to the concert, and the Beastie Boys were not happy with the crowd reaction. The crowd maybe not as rowdy as they wanted them to be. So their response to that was to start berating the crowd, verbal abuse, non-stop, throwing beer into the crowd. They were not happy with the crowd's reaction and let the crowd know that they weren't happy with that reaction. So that just kind of really put a downer on that show. So Beastie Boys, 1987, not a great concert. Again, you might have seen them. Please comment below if you saw them, and they put on a great show. Every band has their good nights and bad nights. Next up, Jethro Tull, 1995. And I really was hyped for this show. A friend of mine had won the tickets from a local radio station and got hold of me last minute. So we decided to go to the concert together. I was unaware, as I believe he was, that on that particular tour, Jethro Tull was playing their entire new album. And if you didn't have the new album, well, you were kind of lost. Now, I appreciate a talented band. I appreciate Jethro Tull, but it was just a disappointment when I was expecting to hear Bungle in the Jungle and a bunch of the Jethro Tull songs that I knew and loved growing up, but they didn't play them. Now, I do believe they played the edited version of Thick as a Brick, but most of the songs were from the new album, kind of force-fed that to the crowd. The album they were touring on was called Roots to Branches, and if you want to check that out, it was released in 1995. It got pretty good reviews, so it wasn't that it was a bad album, it's that the album had just come out, and most people were not familiar with it yet, and that time you couldn't just stream the audio right away as soon as it came out or go to YouTube and listen to it. So if you hadn't ran to the record store and bought it, then you probably weren't familiar with the material. But again, as I've said with other bands, I've seen lots of live performances on video. They're a very good live band, known to be one of the best live bands, but just not a good night for me. That's Jethro Tull. And I'll give you one more on my worst concerts list. And again, these are concert experiences, right? Your mileage may vary. Maybe you saw these performers, these bands, and they put on a great show. I totally understand that. Everybody's going to have their different experiences and their different opinions. But these go on my list of best and worst concert experiences. And I'll wrap it up with 1998, Roger Hodgson. Now, if you're a Supertramp fan, you know that he was one of the forces behind their success. Well, he went solo after that band broke up. And I saw him in 1998. It was even called the Solo Tramp Tour. And yes, he did all the Supertramp hits, except for one. He did not do Bloody Well Right, which was one of their most popular album rock songs. Didn't explain why he couldn't do it, although he kept asking the crowd, what is it you want to hear? And every time he did, they would yell out Bloody Well Right, and he'd go, oh, I can't play that. So Crowd was getting a little agitated at that. And then he decided to launch into one of his new songs that had a very slow beginning to it. And the crowd did not take to that, started yelling. He got angry, started yelling back at the crowd. Just not a great interaction there. So Roger Hodgson on the Solo Tramp tour does not get marked up as one of my favorite concerts. Well, there you have it. Best and worst concert experiences. By no stretch of the imagination were these the best and worst bands in concert. Again, these are just individual experiences. What were your favorite best and worst concerts? Go ahead and put them down below in the comments. And thanks for joining us today. And we'll talk to you again soon with more Music Meanderings.